basically, the book of Ephesians describes this whole process as being filled with the Spirit. The way all this works, the way chapter 4 is put off, be renewed, and put on the new man, is in chapter 5. And look at what it says starting in verse 15. The Spirit filling our life is the power source to live out our calling. And so Paul starts describing the fullness of the Holy Spirit, and he says, when the Holy Spirit fills you, it transforms everything in our life. Now, I love my favorite illustration of the fullness of the Spirit is gloves. You can go to Walmart or wherever you want to go, and you can buy a gardening glove, and you can take it and throw it out in the garden, and it won't do anything. Ants will crawl in it, slugs, it'll get wet, but the sprinkler, it just sit there until it gets filled by a hand. You can buy a golf glove, put it in your cart, in your bag, it won't play golf until a hand fills it. I mean, with anything. You understand. You get the idea. You can get a snowball throwing glove and put it down. It won't throw snowballs until your hand goes in. So every glove needs to be filled. We can only live the way that God made us as new creations if the Holy Spirit fills the glove of our life. So if you have a gardening glove on a non-gardener, you need to take it off of the gardener and put it onto a gardener, and then that glove can garden. And God says, you can't live the new life only if I fill you. And so that's the idea of the fullness of the Spirit. Don't think of something mystical. Think of getting me out of the way and asking the Spirit of God to run my life, to fill my life. That's what a new creation wants from Christ. We say, I'm pulling over my life. I'm getting rid of Ephesians 4:22, the old me, the stinky. I'm asking you to change my mind, and I want to put on the new me. Fill the glove of my life. Okay, what happens? Verse 18, it says, don't be drunk with wine because it's dissipation, but be constantly being filled with the Spirit. But what happens when we do that? The fullness of the Holy Spirit overflows into our marriages. Did you know the first century had abysmal marriages in the Roman Empire? Basically, not among slaves, but among the non-slave people, the normal citizens. Most people got married to have a wife that took care of the house and the children and gave them a legitimate heir to pass their estate onto. But the man did not think romantically about that wife. She was just the fixture at home that did all that. In Roman culture, the girlfriends were out at work, at the gym, at the country club. The wife stayed home. She watched the kids and had the house ready when the man came home. The man's life was out there. And they had concubines, they had consorts, there's all kinds of words for it, but that was normal. It wasn't considered illicit, it was just Roman lifestyle. And so Christianity comes, and these men who had consorts, concubines, and everything else get saved, and they leave that, but they're in this culture where the wife is like the blender at home, and Paul taught them, you're supposed to love your wife with the same love you have for Christ. And the men went, that's a novel idea. So they started doing it. And you know what happened in the Roman world? The people from work and the gym and the country club and the bar didn't see him anymore, and they saw him walking around with this woman, treating her like she's divine. And they started saying, what is going on? And that is, the fullness of the Holy Spirit overflows into marriages that are changed by God into reflections of Christ's love. When Paul sent Titus to Crete, the island of Crete, in the middle of the Mediterranean, and he started training in the church, what did he train the women to do? The first lesson of every godly woman in Titus 2 was to learn how to love their husbands. For generations, they had been left as the blender, and so it was generational that you just did your thing and had nothing to do with him, and he was out consorting and concubining, and you just took care of the kids in the house. And all of a sudden he shows up, and you go, what are you doing here? go back, I've lived all my life without you. And they had to be trained how to look on their husbands as their very best friends in the world. And it turned the world upside down. That's why you read that in Acts. These people have turned the world upside down. You get involved with Christ, you leave the gym and the concubine, the consort thing, and you start paying attention to that woman at home, and you start treating her like royalty, and that woman has to relearn how to get along with you because you've been out of her life. And that's only possible by the fullness of the Holy Spirit. See, what I'm describing is humanly not possible. You can buy a book and you can watch a video. You can't do this without the power, the operating system, the Holy Spirit. But it flows into our families. Look at what Ephesians 6 says. I just have covered the verses 22 to 31 or 33 of chapter 5, but now in chapter 6, this new operating system changes families, and families are changed by God into reflections of Christ's peace. You see, a godly family and a godly life is characterized by peace, not turmoil, not conflict. Those are evidences that God is not filling the glove. We are. And when there's conflict, and when there's discord, and when there's disharmony, and when there's all the selfish ambitions and fighting, the operating system is being neglected. It's not being protected. It's not being allowed to fill our lives. What happens when God fills parenting? Well, children look on their parents as if the Lord's talking to them, not their parents. And boy, that's supernatural. All of a sudden, they say, no matter what I think of you, no matter what I think of your rules, I'm going to respond as if I'm responding to the Lord. Do you see what it says? Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for that is right. And a lot of those children had unsaved parents. A lot of those children were the byproducts of the Roman culture, and they had to start showing what the Holy Spirit brings. Look at chapter 5, verse 21. You notice after they get filled with the Holy Spirit in verse 18, verse 21 says that there's this mutual submission. Children even learn to be submissive to their parents, not from force, but through the Spirit of God within them. And they want to honor their parents. And look what parents do in verse 4. They stop provoking, and they learn to nurture and train them with the Word, admonish them with the Word. So basically, the fullness of the Holy Spirit overflowed into the families. Already overflowed into their lives. They changed. Overflowed into their marriages. They were revolutionized. Overflowed into their families. They became amazing. Not no problems, but a solution to the problems. A solution, a hope, a change was possible.